Once again, we're recording kind of like 25 minutes into the conversation.
That's
As
okay.
one of the recent habits of the Data Storytellers podcast. And I'm here with Alix Rice of Compass Group. And Alex and I have been working for a while now. I think we started our first conversations sometime in 2023, right? So you
Yeah.
joined one of our masterclasses and you've been kind of involved in the Data Storytellers journey in a meaningful way. And I'm very happy that today we can share some of your professional insights with the rest of our audience. You already linked up with a bunch of our other members, right,
Yep.
on multiple touch points, but there are some upcoming ones, some planned collaborations that we're super excited about. So Alex, without further ado, welcome on the show.
Thank you very much. I'm excited to be here. And yeah, it's been, I want to say over a year ago when I went through the masterclass. And to your point, met a lot of amazing people through that and just continue to meet more people in the Data Storytellers Network. So really excited to be here and continue to grow with Data Storytellers.
So maybe I didn't plan on this segue, but maybe it would be the perfect segue of if you reflect on it, what led you to join the Data Leaders Masterclass from the perspective of like what is your role right now? What was your
hmm
role at the time, right? And what is the journey that you're on right now as a data analytics leader? And start as early as you think is best,
Yeah.
because I would love to understand the journey.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I will back up a little bit. So I've been with Compass Group for just over 3 years, and I've been in a data capacity role the entire time. But that has grown, and at that moment, so like I said, I think it was just over a year ago, I finished up the masterclass, and at that time, I was leading our sales analytics practice for our entire sales organization, and constantly looking for anything that I could get my hands on of either content or people and conversations that were doing like for like things. Not, it doesn't have to be sales analytics, but it had to be something data. And I'm like, there has to be people out there that are doing this. So this came across my desk, and I was like, this looks really interesting. And then we started having conversations, and I was like, this looks even more interesting. And then going through the masterclass that Friday afternoon, I looked forward to a Friday afternoon, 2.5 hour long meeting because it was great people, great conversation, and just continuously learning about people that are in the same boat that we're at, people that have already done crazy changes and transformations. And I was like, all right, there's so much runway and so much capability here that just even getting this network of people to bounce ideas off of is well worth the time. And it continues to be well worth the time.
But really appreciate those words. And you see, actually, I've been reflecting on this lately because, again, like every story, you can only see it in perspective, even
hmm
the whys and the wheres, and where it leads. And I think one of the things why one of the reasons why the conversations are so engaging in this community, and I'm just also a beneficiary of that. I always say that I'd like to take more credit for it if I could, right? But most
Yeah.
of the job is not me. I mean, most of the time I'm just trying to stay out of the way, and just be there with the camera and the microphone at the right place in the right time with the right person. But I think it just naturally started to attract a very particular like type and breed of data analytics leader, right?
hmm
Like the ambitious, competitive in a good way, like people who are extremely collaborative, right? Because it just requires the whole enterprise, even like working together in on a project like this, like what you guys did, let's say during the masterclass that you attended, that was the online
Yeah.
version, which kind of since evolved into our kind of yearly touch point, or like every other month we have an online touch point, right? But we have the face to face, and
hmm
you'll see. So we're gonna meet in Nashville. So when we're releasing it, we might be even on the other side of Nashville already.
Yeah.
We'll see, right? More content on that is going to hit the ether soon as well. But really, the work that we do together there, why it's fruitful and why the outcomes are so impactful, is because of the people there and the type of person that it
Yeah.
attracts. And that's why also I'm enjoying these conversations, because even just with you, really like seeing the kind of insights that you brought to the conversation, or even as we're like working together to really produce something meaningful for the profession, right? Just kind of your insights I found very, very refreshing and energizing. So for you, where do you think? So when did you know that, hey, wow, I'm actually about to like work on data analytics. I'm going to be a
Hmm.
data analytics leader. Was that a moment when that became a realization or a desire?
That is a great question. And I would say I do have a pretty clear moment that just was built upon. And I've had these moments that have been confirming that I'm like, okay, yes, I'm absolutely in the right career path and the job function that I want to be in. So I was a person who thought I was going to go in the medical field for the longest time growing up. I went to college, was pre med, and had this moment of like, there's a lot of ways to help people at the end of the day. There's a lot of other things out here. And so at that point, I started to really look around like, okay, what other career paths are there? And I decided to go get an MBA. I had never taken a business class, I had never taken anything. And I decided, you know what? I really just want to see what I can go learn and see if something sticks at the end of the day. And it was during my MBA that it stuck. The university that I went to had a great consulting program, and it was all about problem solving. Obviously, consultants are brought in to solve big, complex problems or think about things differently than what a company is doing. And that is when I had multiple engagements that I was like, okay, I really like problem solving, but I really like problem solving with data. And that's not just like financial numbers and looking at balance sheets and pro formas. It's like, no, there's a ton of data just out in the ether and
Hmm.
also within a company that we can put all this together and really look at things a different way. And so that is when I really started to hone in on, okay, I think I really want to go into data and analytics because one, it's cool to like see all the information that people have and people are trying to use. And then of course the tools that we have at our disposal today, we can visualize that, we can make decisions or get insights within minutes versus it used to be, I mean, I don't want to think about what it was before I got into the profession of the manual work that people amazingly did to draw insight, but at the speed and the volume that we are able to use data to put it together, to synthesize it, to put it together, make an insight, and help someone potentially make a better decision, a more informed decision, is when I was like, this is the path for me, and it's been really cool to see that transformation, even in my 3 years at Compass. But for me, it's like I'm definitely one of those people that I'm a planner. I like to see all the like when I take a trip, I'm like, okay, here's the itinerary. Here's what we're gonna do. Here's our options. Like I gotta see all the data. So it's been confirmed over many years now that this is the path that I was supposed to be on. And it's just fun. It's fun to solve problems with information at the end of the day.
Hmm. And I just reflected on that too. That like let's say back in the day, even like a couple of hundred years ago, if you wanted to cross the Atlantic, just you think
Hmm.
about the amount of effort and coordination and skill and determination and everything that it took to navigate those
Yeah.
waters and for months and months. I mean, sometimes those people were out for, a year or so or more out at
Hmm.
sea. So it's like how difficult that was then and how easy compared to that it is now. And something
Yeah,
like that happened with data analytics, right? So it's
for sure.
basically, as you said, the availability, the ease of access and all that. Now obviously with that a bunch of other pitfalls emerge and
Oh yeah.
complexity with that too, right? But I think data analytics is like starting to become what it was always supposed to be, kind of what we are living through it in a way. It's almost like this didn't exist, maybe it existed within IT, within
Hmm.
business, within marketing, within finance in one shape or form, right? But as its own function, it hasn't really earned its kind of like historical position
100%.
just yet, but we are living through that right now. So that's why it's an exciting place to be.
I
Exciting place to
definitely
be.
I definitely agree with that. That's a good way to look at it in the sense of everyone has always had data. Your respective department, your respective marketplace, whatever it is that you're looking for. There's always been data, but I feel like that's where we're at now is kind of this, I'd say the pinnacle moment of we all know we have so much data at our fingertips. How do we actually do something with all of it? And how do we bridge those silos that, to your point, marketing has data that, well, sales may want that data. Well, finance may want that data. Operations may want that data. How do we get all that data together that everyone can get what they need out of it and help them do their job more efficiently? I'd say that's like the thing that keeps me up at night a lot of times because I think it's the company that I work for, it's massive. We have a lot of things going on. We're doing amazing things. There's so much data, but it's hard to use all of it to actually do things and make sure we're helping each individual who needs a different piece of that data and has a different level of understanding of data and how to read data and use data. Like that's a big challenge. I think that everyone in a data and analytics role is trying to solve for, and it's a challenge because it's ever changing.
And here's a question to you, and I would ask that question also with, like, specifically if you consider some of the conversations that you had during the masterclass with your
Hmm.
peers as well, is that how do you think that data analytics functions today are being perceived and treated right now in
Mm.
organizations? A big question because also it's, again, no one size fits all, but there's a pattern, right? That a lot of organizations kind of look at
Hmm.
data and analytics, and data analytics is not playing just yet the role that it should
Correct.
and supposed to. It's destined to play. So, what is that discrepancy? Like, where do you see those sticking points and the
Yeah.
biggest opportunities to overcome?
Yeah, that's a great question. I feel like traditionally data has always been, I mean, data could be a dirty word for most people. I think it's just like IT. Like, well, IT
Mhm.
houses all the data, IT has access to all the data. They either control it, they don't give it, whatever the reason may be, that's just where it used to sit. I feel like a lot of organizations are going through this change of, well, we're putting analysts within their respective departments that are really focused on that side of the data. But then again, are we looking at data across the board at the whole business? I think data analytics is a business function. So it needs to sit within the business, whatever level that may be. And to your point about perception, I think it's all in the eyes of the beholder at the end of the day. Data analytics is we're trying to solve problems, and I say it all the time, I am selling what we're putting out every single day. So if the people that we're working with, the questions we get, if we put something back in front of them and they don't see the value, then we also have to go back to the drawing board and say, okay, well, what is it that you're actually looking for? How can we make this what you need it to be? How can we make this not even, we don't really care about the work, but it's like that's our job to take care of the work. But are you getting the output and the insight that you need to move forward? So I think from that standpoint, it's a business function at the end of the day. So there's a need to have them within each respective department, and then for companies that are trying to look at everything holistically, it has to sit at the highest level as well, in my opinion.
Hmm. So, with this, we already kind of identified a few themes of, okay, where do you, as a professional today, if you had to look at your key themes during this journey that you've had as a data analytics leader,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, which one are those categories do you think is the most foundational?
Ooh. I
And I'm
mean,
talking mainly about your kind of playbook
yeah,
that we already spoke
yeah,
about.
yeah.
Which one do you think is like the bedrock of it?
So I see two sides of it. I think the one that's a not so fun topic to talk about that's absolutely essential to do everything is data governance. No one's favorite word to talk about, but you can't do anything without data governance. You cannot have a full scale transformation. You cannot do data driven decision making until you know what data you're looking at, how we're using it, how we're normalizing it, where is it coming from, how is it standardized, what is everyone else doing? Like you just can't do anything with that. I think that's the foundation piece. But I also think this is more on the people side. It's just an entire mindset shift. It is an entire change management process. It's one thing to roll out new technology, give someone a new tool, but if we're not talking about why are we looking at this tool? Why are we asking you to use this? Why do we think it's going to be valuable? How do we expect this to change? Like if we're not talking about that roadmap and again, thinking about it through the lens of data and digital transformation, we won't be successful because it kind of goes back to what I just said. At the end of the day, internally, I have customers. Mine are the sales team and the sales leadership and people that are trying to help them do the help the sellers do their job more effectively and efficiently. If I'm not giving them tools and talking about why we're giving them these tools and how they should use them, how is it making them more effective, then the tools don't matter at the end of the day. It's more about the mindset and the process and the practice that is kind of the secondary piece that I feel like has to come into play for a full digital transformation to actually be successful. And that is the thing that I feel like I've learned the most over my time in my current role is that the people, if you neglect the people side of it, it just will never do. The data, the tools, everything will never do what it's really capable of doing.
So I didn't not necessarily anticipate that we will go deep into governance in advance, but so I don't know. I've been having so many conversations lately on
Hmm.
so many levels. I got the impression that some people might even presume that because we're the data storytellers, we're not really about the governance. That the governance stuff is more like like a process slash
Fair.
platform thing, right? Which is yeah, it absolutely it is fair, right? And I would be the first to say that yeah, that's pretty fair.
Yeah.
But lately, I've been just observing that in governance, if you speak to people in governance and involved in
Hmm.
governance, what will they say that their biggest challenge is?
I mean, it's just the sheer volume of data and the different definitions of the same thing that people are looking at. I
Yeah,
mean, simple terms like customer and client, those mean very different things in every system that is captured in. So what does that mean to all sides of the business? And are we using the same terminology? Are we using the same formats? Are we using the same, you name it? We have to be on the same playing field, which I think kind of goes to your point of I probably took a left turn here, but in the sense of we
mhm.
can't do anything about data driven decision making, and specifically in my role of go to market strategy. How do we use data to help us inform our go to market strategy and inform where we're going to go find new business? Well, we have to if we're going to look at internal data, if we're going to look at external data, if we're going to put it all together to paint a pretty picture and really help the team understand why we're suggesting this, the data has to be good to start, and that's where the foundational piece is. I think for all companies is where people are like going back to the drawing board of okay, we have all this data, we can do stuff with it, but like to get really really good at this, we got to start at that foundational piece.
Absolutely. And actually, even yesterday, the podcast we recorded with Albert from Turo, that was also one of the most fascinating parts of the conversation, especially because we kind of looked at those questions also from a human perspective. Like, why
Mm-hmm.
is that data quality also so important? Because without it, like your trust between you and the
100%.
business erodes. And that's one of the so again when people actually talk about the profession and the challenges, it has to do with if you dig deep enough, you will find lack of trust, right? You will
Mm-hmm.
find lack of understanding. You will
Mm-hmm.
find a lack of user-centric design. Like all those things are, if you dig deep enough, that's where the issue will be found, right? Because at the end of the day, that's always what you aim to drive, like human decisions. Like that's at the end of the
Yeah.
day where it all ends up. So it's fascinating to me because I just found that wow, wait a second, the conversations around governance
Mm-hmm.
that are actually right now like really on top of everyone's mind really, and the
Mm-hmm.
solutions that they're looking for is actually very very human and storytelling focused, in a sense
Yeah.
that people need to kind of buy into that journey
Yeah.
with you, which has many elements. So it's just a fascinating kind of parallel and realization I've had.
I feel like I'm jumping the gun here on some conversation that I know we want to have, but I feel like governance is getting um, a spotlight on it a little bit more as we talk about AI. Whatever system you're trying to
Mm,
introduce AI into, got the data you're feeding into those models, especially if it's reading internal data and making suggestions and recommendations, you want that data to be good. You want to know where it's coming from. You want to know how it's normalized. You want to know how often it's updated. Is it a human inputted field versus this is coming from a data source, whatever that may be. If you don't have that, your anything you're running with AI could be at risk to your point of eroding trust with your end user at the end of the day. If they follow what AI said and like, well, this didn't work out, it may just be one time that they like, oh, I don't believe in it now. So if you are not thinking about, to your point, the true foundation at the end of all of it is that and how it impacts the end user, then it could set you up for some really interesting and probably not great situations on the back end.
absolutely. And this is so cool because the Gen AI conversation also on the data storytellers, I think it's already taking a very unique shape that I just don't
Yeah.
see anywhere else around Gen AI. You'll see also when we go to Nashville, we'll have like a session, which we already had a podcast on, by the way, with Jody Blomberg. It's not released just yet. VP of data
Hmm.
science at Cox Automotive, one of our oldest members too.
Hmm.
And basically, she will talk about, and she did talk about, but how the Gen AI checks are coming due in the organizations, right? So all the
Hmm.
promises, and if you look at those pitfalls too, like those checks coming due and then potentially like bouncing and bouncing hard, right?
Yeah.
That will be a big trust issue, because it will either be like, why did you mess it up, or why did you not know that that's a
Yeah.
pitfall, right? So that's a whole conversation
100%.
to be had there. And just I had this insight right now that when we talk about Gen AI, the meme, the most, the I think the phenomenon that has the most mimetic power is ChatGPT, right? So then in the common
Hmm.
mind, it's ChatGPT, right? There was time before ChatGPT, and now there's time after ChatGPT. And if you think about the practical utility of ChatGPT, everyone had their assumptions about what it will. I know that I did, and I was actually very once. I'm always very slow to react to these things. I'm like, yeah, let's just leave it a little bit and then see,
Yeah.
whether
Get
there's
a couple
if there's
versions
something.
in.
Yeah, if there's something there, then I'll definitely notice when I need to notice. But up
Hmm.
until then, it's just noise, right?
Yep.
Um, but with this, when okay, cool, wow, okay, I had all kinds of assumptions about what it can do. For me, it actually was very useful, kind of replaced my Google search in a way, right?
Hmm.
My first, it's not like I'm not using Google anymore at all, right? But the first steps now often is ChatGPT. It became kind of like a notepad uh, more than anything, right? With
Yeah,
quick
I would
access
agree.
to information. But also, like, one of the main reasons why I don't see, even in the near future, me kind of taking that relationship with the product to a deeper, more meaningful level is, for example, the lack of trust. And let me give you an example. This will be kind of random, but I had a conversation with my wife, and a poem came up that I presented when I was 16 in some competition, or like, I don't know, 15,
Okay.
14. Yeah, back in high school, right? It was a cool poem from a Hungarian poet. And I was like, wow, yeah, that was that poem. And that was just a whole random conversation around that poem. And I asked ChatGPT, is like, hey, I couldn't remember exactly some of the lines, right? It's like,
Hmm.
this author, this poem, and then it starts to say, yeah, this poet lived here, this poem, like the history behind it, and then it didn't give me the poem, and I said, hey, but what is the poem? What is
Yeah.
the actual lyrics of the poem? And it gave me the lyrics. And I'm like,
Why
I
wouldn't
don't
you?
remember this. I don't
Oh,
remember this.
okay.
Yeah, I was like, I don't remember this. So
Interesting.
I did a Google search. And I found that, yeah, the original poem is what I remembered. So I'm like, I go back to ChatGPT
Hmm.
saying that this is
Where
not the
this,
poem. Like,
yeah.
and then ChatGPT says, "Oh, apologies, you're right, you're correct. Here's the original." And I'm like,
All
"Where did you
right.
get the other from?" And it just
It's true.
asserted it from who the poet was and when it was written and what information it could pull about the poet. It
Hmm.
made up a poem, which I only bounce
Okay.
into this because I knew the poem. If I didn't, I would with absolute certainty state that poem. No, ChatGPT told me, right? But now I can't. So these learning experiences, I think everyone has, and
Yeah.
now this whole technology with regards to how much trust you can put in it, it really impacts where Gen AI on the user side and the consumer side ends up. So it's just an interesting conversation around trust for sure.
Yeah. That's a super, I haven't even thought about doing, true to your point, like almost A/B testing, but with information that I know, like for
Yeah,
fact,
yeah, yeah,
doing it that
yeah,
way and seeing what comes out. That's, I mean, it's a great example for it in the sense of that's where we sit as an organization of like, well, if we're going to release this product, any product running any type of AI on it, it's like, how do we control some of that? How can we test for that? How can we put that disclaimer out there of, hey, this is a product that is reading things and just it's a suggestion that at the end of the day, it's a suggestion. That does not mean it is fact. That does not mean it is 100% accurate, depending on whatever the topic may be that you're asking it to look for something on. But it's just, that's a big consideration. And I mean, yours is a pretty low stakes example, but when we're talking
Yeah, yeah,
company
yeah,
decisions and yeah, when you throw in
yeah.
internal data, yeah, it gets dicey fast and it can get really dicey. So the comment you made about the checks being due, I think it's going to be an interesting time over the next probably over the next year. I feel like that we're really going to see some of this, either the really big pitfalls come out, or we're going to see that hey, it is what it is, what it says it is, and it's as accurate as we say it is.
And it's funny that before we started recording, we kind of had a conversation about product management, just an
Yep.
ad hoc conversation about product management. It's just such a great example, you see, because with ChatGPT too, like one of the most annoying things about ChatGPT, if you, at least definitely for me, and I heard others too, I saw blog posts about how to overcome this, is that ChatGPT just gives too many disclaimers and caveats. It's like, I'm not an
Yep.
expert, da, 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 go to your doctor, like all that stuff. Or
Yeah.
people hate that. People hate that. So actually, the new version is much more like user centric in the sense that it's finally
Hmm.
it has some brevity, but also now this happened. What I just told you, which is not an isolated incident, right?
Yeah,
Which
by no means.
yeah, you see, so now there's a whole other issue, a whole other challenge that now they
Well,
have.
that's
So
we're going too far at the ends of the spectrum. Like it's to your point, like what's that happy median that we're gonna fit? Like, yes, this there needs to be some disclaimers. We can't have a slew of them on everything you put out, but we can't just remove it as a whole and say, "Oh, this is my bad. Like I got it wrong." But it only got it wrong after you question it again. So then it's like,
yeah,
okay, what is?
exactly, exactly, and they did not give me the disclaimer either. That
Yeah.
hey, here's a poem kind of assumed, or like, oh, I don't have the exact lyrics, or just the context to become more human, because that's why now the new one too is better because it feels more human, right?
Mm,
Look, it feels less like a verbose robot,
it's
but at
trying.
the
Yeah.
same time now you have pitfalls. So it's like very very
Yeah.
interesting that it's hard to nail it down. So look, this is another fascinating conversation to be had about the checks coming due and the checks bouncing, but also we had a bunch of topics that we wanted to kind of
Yeah.
explore in some depth in the context of your career playbook, right? So maybe we already again like touching on all of those subjects, but as a kind of like a
Hmm.
structured a body of themes, where would you want to start with diving into that? Now we actually spoke about a little bit of your role and your journey and some of the things that you think about.
Yeah. I mean, I think at the end of the day, what I spend across all the different things that we're working on managing, I think at the heart of everything that we're doing and I'm really focused on is that data driven decision making. So we talked a little bit about that of what does that mean to the end user, but then we can talk about kind of what it is the work that we're doing, what we're looking at. I think that's what gets me excited is like I mentioned earlier, getting good data into the hands of people to go make decisions, and that looks really different for everyone.
Mhm. And so with digital transformation specifically, right? So again,
Hmm.
you are like a very particular like breed of data analytics leader, right?
Hmm.
Who, with regards to digital transformation as well, with big companies that have not been doing data analytics and digital for most of their history, right? We're talking about some old businesses like
Hmm.
Caterpillar that we work with, more than 100 years old, and many of them, right, decades and decades and decades, and even if you think about a company like Dairy Queen, right, so another board of advisory member that you will meet is Lance Goldsmeyer from Dairy
Hmm.
Queen, who's also presenting their story in Nashville, but we had a really good podcast on the past 10 years of data analytics at Dairy Queen because Lance joined them a decade ago, and it's been a
Yeah.
whole roller coaster in a good way, that there were some major changes and just the
Hmm.
whole history of the brand and data analytics, but it goes way back. I mean, Dairy Queen, I did not know this, but it's actually the OG fast food chain. Back in the 60s there were 10 times as many Dairy Queens than
Hmm.
McDonald's is and KFC's and Burger King's combined, right? So it's an old organization with its own habits, right? So
Yeah,
how do you think specifically that maybe we can also look at the history of this for a second, because it's kind of embedded the whole data driven
hmm,
conversation and digital transformation, right? So from your
for
perspective
sure.
and from a business perspective, how does digital transformation come into play? What is useful to know about this whole digital transformation that started it's
Yeah.
hard to nail it down, but it started, I guess, like the beginning of the
Yeah.
2000s in a real meaningful way, I guess. I mean, the foundations of it are, buried way back, obviously, maybe in the telephone or something, but we don't need to go back that,
Yeah.
that far. But when do you think that it really became a thing? And then from your perspective, like what kind of role did that play in you becoming a
Yeah.
data leader and the work that you
That's a good question. Yeah, I mean, I think um, I'm blessed to be still pretty young into this career, so don't have the total. Like I said, I don't want to go back to before what it was because it's already hard enough now. But in the sense of, I think some of the key things that kind of unlocked this idea of like, okay, we can do things really differently is data warehousing, data lakes. Why am I blanking on the other name? Data house, data warehouse, data lake.
did?
There's another one that I'm
Now you see, because I think I had it, but because you blocked out, and I think I'm also the
sorry.
data lakes.
Okay.
No, is it the data mesh? Is it the data mesh? That's like,
Yeah,
that's
data
more like,
mesh, data orchestration. I mean, all the things,
yeah,
but
yeah,
just
yeah,
these these massive changes are allowing people to say, oh, well, we don't have to necessarily connect all these tools together, but we can put it all here and we can use it. I think stuff like that has really changed how people started to think about the data that we have and what we're using. I know for us within Compass, we just actually celebrated our 30-year anniversary being in the US. And we have always been obsessed with our customers, as we absolutely should be. We have had phenomenal customer data for years. We have tons
Mm.
of, we have an entire analytics division that supports customers and how do we make sure that we are serving our customers the best way that we possibly can. I would say that transformation really took shape in the last like 10 years for us on the corporate side of, okay, well, again, we got this customer thing figured out. But in the sense of, well, what are we doing at the corporate level? How are we supporting all these departments? How are we connecting the dots between everything? So I think that really took off, like I said, within the last 10 to 15 years for us in the sense of, all right, we really started to dive into what technology is everyone using? What do those tools do the same thing? Are there ways to standardize that? Are there ways to get people on enterprise-wide things that easily share information? How do we look at essentially the world of tools and data and the storage of that data to then help people on this side of it? We're always going to be excellent at customer data through and through. That's never going to change. But then how do we help everyone else that's either pre-sale or pre-operations be better at their job? So I think a lot of it for us was getting everything into the cloud, getting a standardized plan across the board of what is our data warehouse that we're going to use, how are we going to use it, what all information are we going to pump into that, who's going to have access to it. And again, our favorite topic of data governance comes into topic when we're doing it that way. But that's definitely the shift that I feel like we've seen. But I think most companies are seeing that of it just goes back to again the tools and the ease of things changing. I think a lot of the offerings out there that are no code, low code are making it a lot more the barrier to entry into technology a lot less scary for companies in the sense that they don't feel like they have to probably hire a slew of engineers to run all these things and no one ever knows what they're doing. And but if it breaks, this person's working 48 hours overnight to make it happen, to get it up and running again. It's the idea that there's a lot of technology and the infrastructure behind the technology that's a lot less scary than what it used to be. But this kind of goes back to an earlier point you made about the typical leader, like some of those characteristics and traits. It's like it has to be people that are inquisitive. It has to be people that are wanting to push the boundaries that are leading these functions to see what are the next ways we can optimize this. What's the next step of, okay, we've connected this tool and this tool together. Well, what's that next iteration of our roadmap? How do we keep pushing and moving forward? Because the tools, what I've seen across my current role, across conversations with other people, across all industries, it's the sense of we, the people in the process and the companies, can't keep up with the tools that are getting rolled out and the enhancements that they are making. Like that's just not going to change, I feel like, ever at this point. But how can we stay aligned with the business and making sure we're meeting those objectives with the offerings that we have and then thinking into the future of, okay, well, this is what they said they really need. We've achieved that. That's MVP. Well, here's that next little thing we're going to give them because that's actually going a step further that they didn't even know that we could do with the technology, but it solves, again, a business case. So I think there's a lot of pieces that kind of play into it.
Hmm. And now that we're talking about it, so whenever we explore these stories of leaders and data teams within an organization, I can
Hmm.
see how, for example, the conversation we had with Albert at Turo. So the fascinating uh, angle there, really, at the end of the day, during that story, was how their data team are the same type of business partners to the rest of the organizations that Turo is to its customers, because that
Hmm.
business model, right? There are renters and there are people who are renting the cars. Like it's very like everyone is kind of in a business partnership with each
At the
other,
end of the
right?
day,
And
100%.
yeah, at the end of the day. So actually observing that was fascinating to me. When you said that you guys are very customer centric, um, I've seen that the most successful data analytics functions are very customer centric, right? In
Hmm.
the sense that you guys have a value to provide. And when you're obsessing about your customer, really like who the customer is, what do they actually care about? What is their life and day like?
Hmm.
What is their work? Like, how does that whole thing just look like? How can you provide value? In what ways? In what kind of services? It really fuels innovation and instills a culture within the organization too. That's just it just helps you to remain engaged and then also help the actual innovative spirit. So I always think about Apple as the company that during the time of Steve Jobs, I mean, you can
Yeah,
love or hate Steve Jobs. I think now from the distance, everyone is like, yeah, he was like pretty much a great person. Wasn't a saint, right? But he
but
was
an innovator and a visionary.
absolutely. And everything that Apple is today is because of him, still, right?
100%.
So now the company is being run. And again, I think I'm someone who's kind of locked in the Apple ecosystem, right? But it's a different relationship that I have with the brand than when, the iPhone 4 or 5 came out, which is, I'm that old that I was, I still had those. And actually, with this, how now they're shift from that a little bit. Actually, then now you don't think about Apple as the most innovative company in the world, right? At a time
Hmm.
when you ask like, which one is the most innovative company in the world? Everyone, Apple, like they are
Hmm.
innovation. They are that. Like right now, they are actually very, very sluggish. And I mean,
Yeah.
they still produce good products and they are a successful company and all that, right? But it's something did change, right?
Hmm.
And I can also see that even with me, like some of those little things that are now when some design issue shows up, and I'm like, this is like I'm not I don't try to be like, oh, there's this little glitch so my day is
Yeah,
ruined, right? I no don't mean that, but some of your expectations that you had towards Apple are now kind of it's like a different thing now, right?
for sure. I definitely agree with
So
that.
so
I
with the
think
user
it's
centric design, yeah.
Yeah, no, and I think I mean, you said it spot on. I think a lot of companies, especially Apple's a great example of it's, yes, B2C at the end of the day, but it's also B2B. And they do a lot of other things than what people even see that they do. But in a lot of roles, especially a lot of data roles, we are not, my customer is a lot of different people across an organization. I'm not talking to a customer ever, like an external customer, ever. So to your point, it's, well, how do we transform their journey just like they were any other customer? How do we get them Apple's? I'm an Apple girl through and through. I have every
Hmm.
product. Upgrade my phone every year. Yeah, they got me. But it's the ecosystem. It's the ease of use. It's the connectivity. Um, a pretty clear expectation of, yeah, they're going to roll updates out, all those things, but it's sticky. My relationship with them is sticky. It's the same
Yeah.
question we're asking ourselves as we are developing new products that we're rolling out internally. How do we make our customers, in my example, the sales team, how do I make our new CRM sticky for them? How do I make them want to be in it, use it,
Mm.
find value in it, be okay with the updates, with the changes that we're going to roll out? It's the exact same view, just a different customer.
So I'm glad we hit this because first of all, do you remember from the masterclass? I know it was when you attended; it was a while back. But Dave
Okay.
Coughlin's case study about the
Mm-hmm.
adoption, when he said that
Yes.
the app is the apex predator of data science, and he brought that example
Yes.
of yeah, and he used the root beer analogy to kind of mask what they've done, but it was basically the whole playbook, right? It
Hmm.
was a good story, and he talks about in that presentation, which is I think like 30 minutes, user-centric design. And
Hmm.
user-centric design is a whole thing. It's a
Yeah,
whole it's fascinating field, basically.
100%.
User-centric design, it's a growing field too.
Hmm.
um, and we're actually going to, in our advanced business communication and storytelling series, which I think we have like 17 or 16 episodes in it that are being released now, like every couple of weeks. So there's still one area that we will add to that, which is user-centric design. And in Nashville, we're actually planning on like running a session
Oh,
on that
awesome.
particular
Yeah.
topic. So it's something that is dear, like close and dear to my heart. So also, just a question before we maybe just move into that a little bit, and just I would
Hmm.
love to get your take, especially that you said that you are like die hard Apple because they locked you in. Also, by the way, again, I mean, and I still enjoy the products, but if you want to understand like kind of my relationship with them, is that I have an iPhone 13 mini, right?
Okay.
Because I'm nostalgic about the iPhone 5 because as Steve Jobs said at the time, when they created that size, he said that this is the perfect size. This is the
All
perfect
right.
size. He said that it's no bigger, no smaller. We found it. This is that he proclaimed it, right? He kind of
Yeah.
said that. Now, of course, Apple after his death, that they brought out the bigger phones.
Hmm.
You can only make a move so bold not to do that if you have someone like Steve Jobs on, right?
It's true.
So I understand that, right? But I'm the kind of person who, for those particular reasons, right, I'm reminiscing about that, right? So for
Interesting.
you, like if you think about why you love Apple, right?
Hmm.
If you map that onto data and analytics, right? Like what kind of principles do you see there that you as a leader now you find yourself really drawn to, right, when you're building products and you're
Hmm.
providing value to your internal customers, and also because but basically your role is also like data strategy, right? Like I know that,
Yeah. Data
but
strategy
I
and
know you.
technology, like thinking about it, it's the combination of all of it coming together. So that's a really interesting question. I mean, I think to your point, some of the features and the functions that Apple does better than anyone, like I have my phone and I can just swipe it over to my Mac and it's there. And some
Hmm.
of the scan, like some of the things that just like you don't think about until you need it is
Mm,
the best thing that they have. And it's like, oh, this is just a click of a button and it's there. Or it's
hmm.
I don't know, that's the one example I use all the time. Like the scan option, I use a couple other things pretty consistently, but I think it's stuff like that. It's one of those, it may not be the most used feature. It may not be the most sexy feature at the end of the day, but it's
Hmm.
something that solves a problem. I
Hmm.
used to have to plug, send an email, copy and paste, and then print and all this, and it's like we don't have to do that anymore. Like with the two pieces of technology that I use from Apple, they don't have to do that anymore. And then even the connectivity
Hmm.
between like music, I have HomePods around my house. I have headphones in. I mean, I can play it wherever I want. It's just things like that that make my life easier. That are probably for other people they don't really care about them, but for me it makes sense. But I think to your point in the question of how does that change kind of in my world, it's that same idea is being on the business side and thinking of my stakeholders are the sales organization, every single role, but as well as a steward of data through the organization. How can I make sure that we are designing the products that we're using that solves both sides of the house? Of I make sure that my seller's life is easier when he's looking at a pipeline or a forecast and has true awareness of all the data flowing through. And then at an organizational level, how do I give them an accurate forecast that they trust? How how do I solve both problems with the same tools and just changing features here and there for different people? So I think it's kind of that same, like you said, design thinking in a way, and product roadmap in a way of making sure you know the use cases. So like I said, I don't know how many people even know that feature exists about the scanning and just shifting things over from one device to the other. I use it daily. um,
Hmm.
it may not matter to someone else, but I think that's the same thing with any product that you're rolling out, really anything. Of some people will use every single feature and function and other people will only want to use it for one thing. And I think that's
Hmm.
Apple's trying to do it for all. Like they're trying to be the photographer, the creative, trying to give them the best tools. For someone who likes music, I have a really good ecosystem of how I listen to my music and around my house, depending on what I'm doing. Like there's just different things that matter to different people, and trying to map all of that out and figure it out. And then to your point, what's the data underneath all of it?
This is such a cool conversation to be had, even from when probably you guys did this on the masterclass too, but also in Nashville. I remember we did that in Austin too. Like that
Hmm.
whole conversation that can emerge amidst all those case studies around things like, okay, when we talk about even self-service, like how much access do you actually give? How
Yep.
much like restrictions, and then even the idea of a restriction, the restrictions can be the most valuable things to a user. I mean, if you think about Apple, the whole Android versus Apple thing like back in the day. Oh, but Android you can do that, or you could do that. But I'm like,
Hmm.
but I don't want that freedom.
No,
I want to be closed into a more tight little ecosystem that serves my specific needs. At the end of the day, I'm still like using Apple, and I don't see myself going anywhere. Is because it's still the most stable. And that's for me.
100%.
That's the most important thing. That it. I'm the kind of person everyone has their shakes. I can't handle the slow computer. I can't handle like it's
Yeah.
like any lag. I can't really, and I'm still deeply scandalized when that happens on Apple or my Mac, or I need to restart my
Hmm.
Mac. Right, I'm very very. But in that particular instance, the reliability and the trust in it. That
Yeah.
well, look, if I press that button, it will work.
Yeah. But I think that's the beauty and kind of the crux of technology right there is what your value set and why you have pledged an allegiance to Apple versus what my allegiance to Apple is different. But the product does, our phones work the same way. The foundation of the technology is the same, but how do we build something that is useful and meets those value sets? And again, it kind of goes to that human centric design. You have to think about all of those elements. You have to know who it is that is using your products and how they want to use the products, and how do we make sure that we continuously hit the mark and then ideally exceed the mark when we roll out a new version. It's I think it's one of the most fascinating things. I think people are fascinating. I think when we talk about technology, the human side of it is the hardest thing to monitor, maintain, exceed expectations, because you're not. I heard it at a summit not too long ago. It's when we're doing digital transformation, technology innovation, it is extremely hard from an adoption standpoint because you are actually trying to change someone's belief set. Like in our case, we have a current system, a current CRM system. Some people think it's fine. Some people think it's horrible. Well, regardless, we're going to a new one. I have to change all of their beliefs that this is the right move, that this is going to help them do their job. And changing the belief set is an entirely different framework than just like, here's new technology, here's why it's great, here's how to use it. No, it's getting down to those actual human elements that we all have. We resist change, we're scared of new. For the most part, depending on what user set you have, but there's most people will always retreat to what's comfortable. Technology is uncomfortable, and trying to get entire user sets or buyers to buy your product that's new and uncomfortable and unknown is the most fascinating piece of technology, I think.
So I just had also like even during the conversation, I kind of saw a a
Hmm.
a cool project emerging, which I won't be able to share with the audience just now, right? So I think we kind of ended up exploring angles here that just really offer some fascinating ways forward
Hmm.
in our collaboration. So for that purpose, I'm going to steal you from the audience, and the
Okay.
last 10 minutes I will need to do off air, right? So maybe that's like a little teaser
Okay.
for the listeners. Something might be coming down the pipe, maybe, maybe not. But look, I really enjoyed the conversation. I mean, altogether, we almost hit 1.5 hours. And to end from the time of the recording, I think we're just landing it under an hour. That's my dream, by the way. Whenever we can land one within an hour,
Hmm.
because I know that I rarely actually tune into something that's more than an hour. That's my
Same.
it's just like tuning into it. So I'm very glad that we could like pack so much value in only 50 minutes, and we're gonna follow up from the final 10. So Alix, thank you very much for coming on the show, and I'll catch you after the recording.
Awesome. Thanks, Les.